I'm joined now by candidate for the U.S. Senate in Michigan, Abdul El Sayed. Thanks so much for joining me.
Always great to be with you, Brian.
So I wanted to bring you on today because you're not just a candidate for Senate in Michigan, you are also a physician, an epidemiologist, and a former health commissioner. And that's especially important right now in light of these recent comments and moves made by Donald Trump and RFK. So there was a big press conference today where they decided to bestow upon us all of this brand new novel medical theories, like, for example, this idea that Tylenol, acetaminophen, causes autism. We're gonna go over some other, batshit crazy things that they said in just a moment, but that seems to be the most egregious example that came out of that press conference. So I want to give you the floor here and not bury the lead and just kind of have you respond to that.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, Brian. And I just want to step back for a second. There are a lot of really, really thoughtful, really, really smart people who spent a lot of time learning how to understand the causes of disease. I happen to go to grad school with many of them because that's what epidemiologists do. And the idea that Brainworm Bro is going to have, within a matter of a couple of months, just discovered the cause of autism, as if there is one single cause, like people who've been looking for it wouldn't have found it by now, is just insane on its own terms. Like, it just doesn't pass the smell test. Now, let's talk a little bit about the hypothesis that they're posing, because that's all it really is, which is this idea that Tylenol causes autism. And it's not that they're just saying that Tylenol may be one predictor of autism, that there may be causal links that account for some small proportion of the autism that has been diagnosed. They're saying that it is the silver bullet cause of autism. And I just want you to think about that. That means that every single person who is diagnosed with autism should have had Tylenol use in pregnancy. It also says that if there was not Tylenol use in pregnancy, that there would not be autism. Like, both of those things are just not factual on their own terms. But then, just step back for a second. There has been a threefold increase in autism diagnosis since the year 2000. Do we think that there's been a threefold increase in Tylenol use during pregnancy? And then it's not like pregnancy is just like one solid thing. There's actually a lot of, fetal changing that happens. So is it Tylenol use in the first trimester? Is it Tylenol use throughout? Is there a certain amount of Tylenol use that we think is acceptable versus not? And then what's happening here is that people are going to take this information and there's going to be a lot of false hope, as in, all I got to do is just not use Tylenol during pregnancy,
right,
which is just not true. And then false blame. People who are going to look back and say, oh my God, maybe it was the Tylenol I used because I had a headache in pregnancy. And then the last point I want folks to understand is that Tylenol is one of the only painkillers that is potentially safe for use in pregnancy right now. So you're now telling pregnant women that they should not touch one of the last things they have. Now ask yourself, Tylenol is a medication that people use to treat other symptoms. So what are the consequences of untreated symptoms that people are using Tylenol for? Like, this is just, it's like these things have no harm, but when you actually think them through, the false hope and the false blame alone are terrible enough, but now you're actually pumping a certain amount of fear that is going to shape people's behaviors moving forward in ways that themselves can be detrimental. This is not like a victimless crime,
right, when
you lie to people about health and healthcare. And all of this, why? Because they want a quick political win on the backs of a large society-wide challenge that has caused a lot of pain and a lot of frustration and a lot of anguish in a lot of homes. And so I just it's this willingness to be wanton with other people's pain that I think is so definitional of everything that's wrong with the Trump presidency, and they just did it again.
And I think what's especially pernicious about this is that they know full well that if and when they're proven wrong, or if and when their thesis doesn't bear itself out, it'll be too far away for anybody to really come back and blame them. So they purposefully choose an avenue here where it'll take years for this hypothesis to actually bear itself out. And so they don't actually have to shoulder any of the blame when none of this stuff comes to fruition. And so like, and this is a recurring theme with what they've done with this administration. They knew, for example, with their one big beautiful bill, that when they cut 17 million people off of Medicaid and strip food assistance away to the tune of $350 billion, that they can push it far enough out into the future that they don't have to endure any of the political consequences for doing it. And so they want to have people endure the consequences of their actions, but they don't want to have to suffer any of the consequences, the political consequences for their own actions.
Yeah, that's right, Brian. And look, there's ample data that has looked at this question, and it's pretty inconclusive. And at most, there may be some link that attributes to the evidence that I've seen maybe 5% of the variation in risk. So it's just, I mean, this is just, they're pulling one point from literature, pointing to that. And then here's the thing about it. Now, because they've got an army of people who are desperate to both prove them right and, honestly, in good faith, to try and find an answer, now what they're going to do is try and wage this information warfare the way that they do everything on social media. And rather than be wedded to the facts, it's like the facts no longer matter, because now the official MAGA position on autism is that it's caused by Tylenol use,
right,
which forces people now to load all of their political identity questions around this one question. And it harkens back to like the worst of the discussion during COVID-19, like ivermectin debates that we still haven't gotten through, which should never have been a debate, because there's absolutely no reason to think that an antiparasitic is going to be effective against a virus. Like, that just doesn't make sense. Like, there's just nothing to substantiate that. But like, here we are, it's still being litigated in the nether regions of the internet.
I want to throw your attention to another moment that occurred at this press conference.
Break up your visits to the doctors. Break them up. Do it in 5 if you can. Now, it's inconvenient. It's inconvenient. Oh, you have to go back another year later. You're going to go back each year for 4 years, 5 years, 3 years. Just break it up. Break it up, because it's too much liquid. Too many different things are going into that baby at too big a number. The size of this thing, when you look at it, it's like 80 different vaccines and beyond vaccines, and 80. Then you give that to a little kid.
Okay, so this is Trump's official medical diagnosis that the vaccine schedule is no good because it's, quote, too much liquid. Again, your response to this pretty cataclysmic change in what would be the healthcare of newborns in this country and infants in this country as the result of Donald Trump not liking the amount of liquid going into babies.
Brian, let me take that two ways. Too much liquid, like, it's not like we've ever given anyone the advice to stay hydrated. But also,
yeah,
I'm so glad that I did 4 years of medical school and did a PhD, and before that took all kinds of undergraduate pre-med classes and the MCAT. I'm so glad I did that in an era when Donald Trump can just do public health and healthcare policy by feels. It's just like a whim. It's like he just has a feel for it. Like, he has a feel for everything else. It was like during COVID when he was talking about the idea that you could just, kind of inject people with bleach and it would do the trick.
Right.
I mean, it's just, the notion that you have to kind of joke about it because the president of the United States is like throwing curveballs from the hip in a press conference about things he has absolutely no clue about, that people are actually going to listen to him about. Like, the fact that we're here in 2025 is just such an indictment on how far we've let our politics come.
Yeah.
So, the hard part about it to me is this. There are a lot of people who, for a lot of political reasons, seem to think that this man knows what he's talking about. And because he said this, there are going to be people out there who are going to make really potentially disastrous, potentially deadly decisions about what they do. And then all of us are affected. And the thing I want folks to understand when it comes to vaccines is that babies under the age of 1, they don't have fully functional immune systems. The reason that it's so important that people get vaccinated is because we actually do live in society together. And the choices that we make shape the lives that we lead. It's like why you want people to stop at red lights, right? Arguably, like, why should anybody stop at a red light? You're trying to get where you're trying to go. If the red light turns red, whatever, just keep going, except for you're going to hit another car, because we live in society with each other. And when you spread this kind of mis and disinformation and you give it the dumbest goddamn justification for it, people listen, and then they do things that affect all of us. So the question now is, what happens when people listen to Donald Trump telling them that somehow the vaccine schedule just got too much liquid and they should rethink their choices about their kids? And now we've got situations where there are fewer people who are vaccinated. There's the higher probability that the viruses we're trying to stop actually do the thing that we named information going through the internet after, which is going viral, literally, because that's what viruses do. And now you're talking about the probability of an infant child being exposed to viruses that otherwise they would not have had to be exposed to. And because their immune systems are non-functional, that kid potentially gets sick and potentially dies. Like, that's what we're talking about here. And I just want you to think about this. Our grandparents were lined up outside of clinics and hospitals the day that a polio vaccine was made available. And their parents did this despite the fact that it was a brand new vaccine. You know why? Because everybody knew somebody who'd been affected by polio. Kids who otherwise for the rest of their lives would not be able to walk because of what polio did. We don't live that reality anymore. And that's a great thing. And I don't want to go back to a world because of this dumbass where we have to worry about babies being infected by polio because this guy thinks that there's too much liquid. It's insane. Like, I mean, part of me is like, I'm really glad to be able to talk to you about this, but part of me is like, I can't believe we have to have this conversation in the year of our Lord 2025.
Right. Well, there is one more piece of what I presume is we can both agree is disinformation, and that's this idea that that there are certain communities who don't encounter any levels of autism. He had mentioned Cuba doesn't have autism, and he mentioned that the Amish community doesn't have autism. Your response to that?
It's just like patently ridiculous. It's just like patently ridiculous. And also, so what's wild to me, let's just take this on its own terms. What's wild to me is that RFK is now using Cuba, which his political brand has demagogued. And I just want to say, one of the things that they do like pretty well in Cuba is they give everybody healthcare. So like, I'm just wondering why RFK is now trying to declare jihad on Tylenol and vaccines, when if he really cares about trying to empower people through health, he could be fighting for something like Medicare for all. And he's not. He could be fighting to take on the corruption at the heart of the decisions that get made about the food that gets grown and sold in our country. But instead, he's focused on stupid, dumb shit like red dye. Yeah. And look, like I'm fine. Go ahead, go on with red dye. But like, really, you think red dye is going to solve the problem? You think misinforming people about Tylenol is going to solve the problem? You think lying to people about vaccines is going to solve the problem? It's not. When you're a demagogue and you want to take credit for solutions to complicated problems that are really way more complicated than your capacity to both understand and actually solve, you oversimplify those problems and then you present them as solved. But here's the problem, is that you actually just make them worse. This is like authoritarian shit. And I think all of us, watching the rhetoric come out of this White House, watching the rhetoric come out of Brainworm Bro, like all of us should be really quite alarmed about what this says about where we're headed. If you think you can remand foundational truth with just a head nod and a word, it says something very, very dangerous about what that means when people actually stand up to you. So we got to start seeing these problems as interrelated. And yeah, look, a lot of folks from backgrounds like mine are going to have to go into hyperdrive to try and explain what's actually happening here. And it's going to politicize questions of vaccines and questions of Tylenol and autism. And that's just a terrible thing for all of us. And so I really just hope that folks listening, just step back for a second and like ask yourself the very simple question. Do we really think that somehow polio magically disappeared on its own? Do we really, really think that there are some communities that are just magically not getting the diseases that have grown threefold in our society? Do we really think that somehow the threefold increase in autism is a function of a threefold increase in Tylenol? Like, are these really things that we really think? Because if you just put on a thinking cap for a moment, you start to realize that this is objectively not just false, but ridiculous. It's like laughable. And the President of the United States and the Secretary of Health and Human Services have done a press conference where they literally just tried to tell us the most ridiculous shit and expect us to believe it. And I think at some point you have to step back and be like, oh, no. It's not just this. It's all of the stuff that's coming out of this administration that is built for the narcissistic consumption of a very, very, very small-headed man rather than the well-being of the rest of us.
Well, look, I think, and this is kind of what you alluded to before, I think it's a shame that we have to spend our time in these interviews pushing back against this kind of overt and dangerous disinformation. I say this as the kid of 2 healthcare workers as well. So, it struck me pretty close to home when I was hearing him talk about this stuff. But that also underscores the need for folks like you to be in positions of power where you can actually push back on these lunatics who are in government that are not only spewing just straight bile and bullshit, but spewing stuff that's going to have real life impacts on a lot of people in this country for some indeterminate amount of time into the future. So with that said, for those who are looking to help your campaign, where can they go?
I hope folks will go to abdulforsenate.com. But like, even right now, I just hope folks will just like take a second, forget my campaign for a minute. Just take a second and ask yourself, like, do we like where this is going? Like, there are a lot of people in that room when he was saying this, and you got to imagine they all know that what he's saying is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay. All of them know what he's saying is ridiculous. And like, not one of them had the like presence of mind to be like, dude, you are one dumb motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me that you actually believe this shit? Like, and you're saying it like you think we all should believe you. Like, part of me is like, when do we say the emperor has no clothes? Yep. Anyway, look, I'm running for U.S. Senate in large part because this is ridiculous. I studied medicine because I really wanted to work in a healthcare system to take care of people. And like, part of me almost can't believe that one of the things I'm going to have to do if I get elected to the U.S. Senate is like be the person in the room to be like, dude, you're a dumbass. Like, I really just can't believe anybody takes your ass seriously.
Yeah.
So maybe, I guess this is where the bar is now. And if you'd like to help me do that, I hope that you'll go to abdulforsenate.com. But like, yeah, I don't know what else to say, man.
The sad reality is that we need people in the Senate to be like, dude, you're a dumbass. I think there's if of all of the groups of people that we are at a severe disadvantage on, that there is a severe dearth of voices on, it is that. So with that said, Abdul, thanks so much for taking the time today, and thanks for the wealth of knowledge that you bring.
I appreciate you, man. It doesn't even take a wealth of knowledge, honestly. Like, part of me is like, I went to grad school for 7 years for this anyway.
Yeah.
Look, man, I appreciate you. Thank you for always keeping it real and creating space to have these conversations. And look, we're having this conversation in a moment where folks don't want the honest, objective facts discussed. And the fact that nobody said this says a lot about the fear that people have about speaking truth to power at all right now. And so I appreciate you doing that. And, we're going to be out here doing that. But like, it takes all of us to just call what we see as we see it. And I just hope folks listening out there recognize that we cannot just keep going along to get along, right? These are dangerous times. And we're talking about the health of babies here, man. Like, if you can't just put the truth and the well-being of infants in front of everything else, what are we even doing?
Yeah.
Like, what is society even if you can't just decide that at least the well-being of babies matters most, and maybe we shouldn't be lying about it.
Perfectly put. Again, I'm going to put the link to your campaign right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. For anybody who wants to donate, you can go ahead and go there. Abdul, thanks for the time.
Appreciate you, man.